Hi everyone, and welcome back to Dobby Books. So, today what I'm going to cover is what I'm currently studying in Greek history. I'm almost done. I'm going to finish my way through the last of the histories, and in this case it's Xenophon, or Xenophon, however you want to pronounce it. I'm finishing up the Peloponnesian War. And then after this I'm going to be finishing up with some of the philosophers, and then I'm done. And then I'll be going into Roman history, which is I've been very much looking forward to. So I'm just going to cover now the sources that I've been using to read up on the Peloponnesian War. And for those who are not familiar with it, the Peloponnesian War was a significant war that happened in ancient Greece, and it was actually can be compared to a civil war because it was Greeks fighting Greeks. So it was the Athenians and their allies fighting Sparta and their allies. Athens had become too big for its britches, basically, after Greece had united to conquer the Persians who were oppressing the Greeks, and Athens and Sparta were together in this. Once the Persians were conquered, Sparta went their way, Athens went their way. Sparta became more and more powerful, and their allies had to either supply them with military might, or if they were too small and they didn't have that resource, then they had to supply them with money. The money was originally kept on the island of Delos or Delos, and that was supposed to be used for defense for everybody, Athens and its allies. But what ended up happening is, as Greece grew in power, and its mindset was empire and expansion. That was its objective. And it started to become too powerful. And it started to freak out those Greek city-states that were not allied in what was called then the Delian League, which was what Athens was with. There were those that were part of the Peloponnese League, which was an older organization, and that's what Sparta was a part of. They were very concerned about Athens' power because they were getting a little too arrogant. Their attitude actually had now become that of the powerful Persians, who thought they couldn't be conquered, and these little petty little Greek city-states, and it was talking to Athens at the time, couldn't possibly conquer them. They were just too powerful. Athens was saying the same thing. So this was the setup for what many refer to as the inevitable war that was to turn out. And you can think on our own civil war here in the United States in the 1860s, where you had the conflict between North and South. And each thought they were right. And those tensions built up. And more things were pulled into each side's argument. And eventually it all just exploded. And we had this civil war. Civil wars have a different kind of suffering, I guess you could say, than wars with foreigners. You're fighting your own country. And this is what was happening in Greece as well. They were fighting with each other. When they were once united against the Persians, now they were divided and killing each other. So it was a very significant war. And the outcome, of course, had repercussions later on for Greek history. And this is what I've been learning about. So there are three texts that I've been using, and I'm going to show them to you. And with those texts, I'm going to show you a children's version or young people's version that I've been able to find that's been able to explain a complicated thing as a war, like the Peloponnesian War, in more simplified terms that may prove helpful for those who are new to this and just want a quick, not a quick summary, but a simplified version of a complex topic, so that when you do attack the grown-up version, it'll be easier for you to understand. So here's the first one. There's Herodotus Histories, and I chose the Landmark Herodotus simply because it has wonderful additional information. It has outstanding maps and references. It also has summaries of each chapter as you go along. You can read the summary of each paragraph before you read the actual paragraph, and in my case, when I was getting a little impatient, I would just read the summaries and go on to the next page. It's a big read, and this is a big book. So we're dealing with here, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books or 9 chapters. And this would be where it begins and ends. So hold on here, just bear with me. Out of this big book, starting here, this much of the book is the actual reading by from Herodotus of the histories. Yeah, so it can be pretty involved. And this is a young people's version. Difference in thinness. But this essentially covers the big Herodotus book. So this I found is called Herodotus and the Road to History, and it's by Jean Bendick. And I found this on Amazon.com, easy enough. And it's got some great little illustrations. And it really does explain a lot of the things on a kid's level that Herodotus tried to explain. Now the next one. Now, Thucydides was one of the generals in the Peloponnesian War. He wrote about the Peloponnesian War, and it's the Landmark Thucydides, just like the one I got for Herodotus. And this covers almost all of the Peloponnesian War. He doesn't finish it. And it's interesting that Thucydides was one of the generals working for Athens, and through no fault of his own, there was a defeat in one of the battles. And Athens, because they were running on stupid, fired him. And then, just relieved him of all his military rank, and then they exiled him, which was a really cruel thing to do. But that's how Athens was behaving at the time. And of this book, okay, this much is what you're reading. And I believe it is 7 books, if I'm not mistaken. 8 books. 8 books. So, again, you have those summaries that are on the margins. If you want to skim through because you don't want to go through everything, or just on parts of it you want to skim through, you have these summaries of the paragraphs as you go along. Excellent maps, in references, sources, etc. Excellent book. This book here is the grown-up one. And this book here is the younger version's one. This covers the Peloponnesian War. It covers the pre-war, where it tells you how everything was ripe for that war to happen. Then it goes through all of the Peloponnesian War, beginning to end, mentioning many of the same people that the full-size book covers. This one is called The Peloponnesian War. It's published by Captivating History. And I was looking through their website the other day. They really have tons of these types of books on major world histories and U.S. histories, on not just wars, but other topics as well. Check it out. And I do want to mention, there's also this one by Captivating History, Ancient Greece for Kids. This book, in 3.5 pages, covers all of the Peloponnesian War, which is covered in this book. Interesting that you see the thinness in there. This is very good. The only complaint I have about this particular book is up until midway into chapter 4. There's 6 or 7 chapters in this book. The maps are awful. Gray on gray, blurry. I'm an old broad. My eyes don't work like they used to. So what I would do at times is I would take a picture of the page and then blow it up to see if I could see the words better. Now, they were still blurry. So the maps were really awful. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I was not able to really clearly see the words on this. I didn't like the maps. But fortunately, about midway through chapter 4 and then going forward, they improved tremendously. They were bigger, they were clearer, they were lighter. There wasn't such a gray on gray so much. This was a better gray on gray. Okay, so this was an excellent resource to cover all of the Peloponnesian War. And because Thucydides doesn't cover all of the Peloponnesian War, that's why we have Xenophon. Xenophon, I guess, wrote a few different books. This one's called Anabasis. And this is also the Landmark Xenophons on Anabasis. The same quality of maps, summaries in the margin, etc. This has 7 books. And of this entire book, this much is what you're reading on the last part of the Peloponnesian War. And the rest is references and indexes and appendices, etc. So these 2 books, Thucydides and Xenophon, are covered in this book. So there's a good starter, and then you can hit the big stuff. And that's all I want to cover right now. Oh, one thing I want to mention. One of the epic poems that I'm going to be reading is about the time after the Iliad. Because we read the Iliad and it ends, but it ends after Hector dies, and it doesn't cover everything else. You don't hear, well, we heard that there was a horse that got pushed into the city, but we don't know what happened. It's not mentioned in the Iliad, nor is it mentioned in the Odyssey. This one, the Trojan epic, or something called Posthomerica, it talks about that. It covers after the Iliad and the destruction of Troy and when everybody fled and what happened to them afterwards, etc. This is epic poetry, so it can get pretty involved. And it's beautifully done depending on the translation that you get. This is by Quintus of Smyrna, and he wrote this, of course, much, much later. And this is a translation by Alan James. If you want to read this in a more simplified form, like for kids, this covers the same thing without it being an epic poem. The Tale of Troy, and this one is written by a well-known author, Roger Lancelyn Green. He wrote, Roger Lancelyn Green. That's a tongue twister. Roger Lancelyn Green. This covers Posthomerica. This is Posthomerica for little kids, and I wanted to throw that in there really quick because I'm also going to be skimming this before I actually read the Posthomerica, because I've never read the big girl one, so I've got to read the little girl one first. And that's it, everybody. As I move along into Roman history and find other finds that help to a younger person understand the same information as well as us old people who need help, I will let you know. Thanks again, and everyone have an awesome day. If you liked what you saw, push that like button or the subscribe button. The more the merrier, and I enjoy.